A skilled mechanic with dirt-stained hands works beneath the hood of a broken-down luxury car on a deserted highway. The expensive suit-wearing woman watching him has no idea that this humble man is about to change her life forever, just as she'll change his. Their chance meeting wasn't just about fixing an engine, but about mending two lives that needed each other more than either could have imagined. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The evening sun cast long shadows across Highway 16 as Ryan Matthews tightened the final bolt on Mrs. Peterson's ancient Chevy. The elderly woman had been bringing her car to his modest repair shop for nearly a decade, though Ryan knew the vehicle probably should have been retired years ago. Still, he understood that not everyone in Riverbrook could afford newer models, especially not on fixed incomes. "All set, Mrs. Peterson," Ryan said, wiping his grease-stained hands on a rag that had seen better days. "I replaced the alternator and topped off your fluids. Should get you through another few months at least." Mrs. Peterson beamed at him, her wrinkled face crinkling with genuine affection. "What would I do without you, Ryan Matthews? Everyone else in town would have charged me triple and told me to junk this old thing." Ryan shrugged off the compliment, though it warmed him all the same. "Just doing my job. And hey, they don't make 'em like they used to. This old girl's got heart." After Mrs. Peterson drove away, Ryan locked up Matthews Auto Repair, a small building that had once been his father's. Pride and joy. The faded sign still bore his dad's handwriting, though Walter Matthews had been gone for 5 years now. Ryan had inherited the shop, the skills, and the philosophy that had guided his father for 30 years. Fix it right, charge fair, and remember that behind every broken car is a person who needs help. Ryan climbed into his own vehicle, a 20-year-old pickup truck he'd rebuilt from salvage. It wasn't pretty, but it was reliable, a testament to his abilities as a mechanic. The truck's engine rumbled to life, a comforting sound that had been the background music to his entire existence. As he drove the 15 minutes to his small rental house on the edge of town, Ryan mentally calculated his earnings for the week. Business had been slower than usual, and after paying the shop's utilities and ordering the parts he needed, there wasn't much left over. His 8-year-old son, Noah, was growing faster than Ryan's wallet could keep up with, and school supplies weren't getting any cheaper. The headlights of his truck swept across the front yard as he pulled into the driveway. The small 2-bedroom house wasn't much, but the rent was affordable, and it was close to Noah's school. The porch light was on, and Ryan could see the silhouette of his elderly neighbor, Miss Greta, rocking gently on the porch swing with Noah beside her. "Dad!" Noah's excited voice rang out as Ryan stepped from the truck. The boy bounded down the steps, a blur of energy and enthusiasm that never failed to lift Ryan's spirits, no matter how tired he felt. "Hey, champ," Ryan said, scooping up his son in a hug that lifted him off the ground. Noah had his mother's eyes, warm brown and full of life. Sometimes it hurt to look at them, but mostly it just reminded Ryan of all he still had to be grateful. Miss Greta rose from the swing, her movement slow but deliberate. "He finished all his homework and even helped me bring in my groceries," she reported with a smile. "You've got a good one here, Ryan." "The best," Ryan agreed, ruffling Noah's dark hair. "Thanks for watching him, Miss Greta. I appreciate it." "Any time," the older woman said, making her way down the steps. "Having him around reminds me of when my grandkids were little. Besides, it's not like my social calendar is overflowing these days." After Miss Greta had gone home to her adjacent house, Ryan and Noah went inside. Their home was modest but clean, with furniture that had been carefully selected from thrift stores and yard sales. Pictures of Noah's mother, Lisa, adorned several surfaces. Ryan had made sure his son would grow up knowing her face, even if he had been too young to remember her when she passed. "Can we have spaghetti tonight, Dad?" Noah asked, already pulling out a pot from the cabinet. At 8 years old, he was remarkably self-sufficient, a trait born of necessity rather than natural inclination. "Spaghetti it is," Ryan agreed, rolling up his sleeves. "Tell me about school while we cook." As Noah chattered about his day, a science project about volcanoes, a playground disagreement that had been amicably resolved, and the classroom gerbil's escape attempt, Ryan felt the day's tension slowly ease from his shoulders. This was what mattered. Not the money troubles, not the uncertain future of the auto shop in an age of computerized vehicles that required specialized equipment he couldn't afford. Just this: his son's voice, their small home, and the simple pleasure of making dinner together. Later, after Noah had gone to bed, Ryan sat at the kitchen table with a stack of bills and his checkbook. The numbers were discouraging. The shop's mortgage payment was due next week, and a supplier was threatening to cut him off if he didn't clear his outstanding balance. Ryan rubbed his eyes, feeling the weight of single parenthood and small business ownership pressing down on him like a hydraulic lift. His phone buzzed with a text message from his friend Tom, who worked at the local towing company. "Got an emergency call from the highway patrol. Woman broke down 20 miles east on Highway 16. Sounds like a simple fix, but I'm stuck with another job. You free? She's offering cash." Ryan glanced at the bills spread before him, then at the baby monitor that allowed him to hear Noah's gentle breathing from his bedroom. Ms. Greta would be asleep by now, and he made it a rule never to leave Noah alone, even if he was sleeping. But cash jobs were hard to come by, and every dollar counted. He texted back, "Noah's asleep, can't leave him." 3 dots appeared as Tom typed his response. "Bring him along? He can sleep in the truck. Woman sounds desperate, some fancy car. People with fancy cars usually tip well." Ryan hesitated. It wasn't ideal, but Noah had fallen asleep in the truck plenty of times during late-night emergency calls, and he could really use the money. "Okay, tell her I'll be there in 30 minutes. Ask her to put her hazards on so I can spot her." Ryan roused Noah gently, wrapping him in a blanket and carrying him to the truck. The boy barely stirred, accustomed to these occasional nighttime journeys. Ryan tucked a pillow under his head and made sure he was securely buckled in before setting off. The highway was nearly empty at this hour, a single ribbon of asphalt cutting through the darkness. Ryan kept the radio off, letting Noah sleep as he drove east, his emergency toolbox rattling in the truck bed. 20 miles out of town, he spotted the hazard lights blinking like a distress signal in the night. As Ryan pulled over, his headlights illuminated a sleek, midnight blue Aston Martin parked on the shoulder, a vehicle so out of place in rural Pennsylvania that he almost did a double take. Even more out of place was the woman standing beside it, speaking on a phone with obvious frustration. She was tall and elegant, dressed in a tailored pantsuit that probably cost more than Ryan's monthly income. Her dark hair was pulled back, in a no-nonsense bun, and even from a distance, Ryan could tell she wasn't from around here. Everything about her, from her posture to her gestures, screamed big city and bigger money. Ryan parked safely behind the Aston Martin and turned, on his own hazards. He checked on Noah, who was still fast asleep, before grabbing his toolbox and approaching the stranded motorist. "Car trouble?" he called out, keeping his voice friendly but professional. The woman turned, ending her call with a curt, "I'll have to call you back." She assessed Ryan with sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. Not his worn jacket, his calloused hands, or the skeptical arch of his brow as he took in her vehicle. "Yes," she replied, her accent refined but not unfriendly. "It just died while I was driving, no warning, nothing. 1 minute it was running perfectly, the next, dead in the water, so to speak." Ryan nodded. "I'm Ryan Matthews. Tom from Riverbrook Towing sent me. Mind if I take a look?" Please do, she said, stepping aside. I'm Catherine Webber. My colleagues call me Kate. Ryan opened the hood, switching on his flashlight to inspect the engine. The Aston Martin was a marvel of engineering, but even the most expensive cars could fall victim to simple mechanical failures. Beautiful machine, he commented, genuinely impressed by the craftsmanship. DB11, 2023 model? Catherine raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by his knowledge. Yes, actually. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. You know your cars. Ryan smiled slightly without looking up from the engine. It's my job to know cars, all types, though I'll admit we don't see many of these in Riverbrook. I can imagine, Catherine said, glancing around at the deserted highway. I was supposed to be in Pittsburgh by now, but my GPS suggested this route as a shortcut. Clearly, that was a mistake on multiple levels. As Ryan continued his inspection, he noticed something odd about the connection to the fuel pump. He leaned in closer, running his fingers along the component. Found your problem, he announced after a few minutes. Fuel pump relay's gone bad. It's a simple fix, actually. I've got a universal one in my truck that should work until you can get a proper replacement from a dealer. How long will it take? Catherine asked, checking her watch. 20 minutes tops, Ryan assured her. You're sure it's not something more serious? Nothing else is wrong with the engine? There was a note of skepticism in her voice that Ryan recognized all too well. The doubt of someone who assumed that small town meant small-minded. I've been fixing cars since I was 12, Ryan said evenly. I'm sure. Catherine had the grace to look somewhat abashed. I apologize if that sounded condescending. I'm just surprised to find someone out here who knows their way around a car like this. Ryan shrugged and went to his truck to retrieve the part, checking on Noah, who had rolled over but remained asleep. When he returned, Catherine was looking at her phone with a frown. No hotels available in the area, she muttered. And the next town is how far? About 40 miles, Ryan answered as he began working on the fuel pump relay. But there's a decent motel back in Riverbrook. Nothing fancy, but it's clean and safe. I know the owner. Catherine sighed, the sound of someone reassessing their plans. I suppose that will have to do. This meeting in Pittsburgh can wait until tomorrow. Ryan worked efficiently, his hands moving with the confidence of someone who had spent thousands of hours learning the inner language of engines. Catherine watched with undisguised interest. You're very good at that, she observed. Where did you train? My dad's shop, Ryan replied. Matthew's Auto Repair. He taught me everything I know. Been running it myself since he passed 5 years ago. I'm sorry about your father, Catherine said, her voice softening slightly. Ryan nodded in acknowledgement, but didn't elaborate. The loss of his father was still a tender spot, especially coming so soon after Lisa's death. Instead, he focused on the task at hand, connecting the new relay and securing it in place. How much do you charge for this kind of service call? Catherine asked. I'm happy to pay whatever is fair. Ryan considered the question as he finished the installation. The standard rate would be the cost of the part plus his emergency call-out fee. But looking at the Aston Martin, he knew the owner could afford more, and he really needed the money. Before he could answer, however, his conscience got the better of him. Walter Matthews had built his reputation on fairness, not on charging what the market would bear. Parts $50, Ryan said, closing the hood. Labor's $75 for the emergency call, so $125 total. Catherine blinked, clearly surprised by the modest sum. That seems, very reasonable. Ryan shrugged. It's what I'd charge anyone. Would you like to try starting it up? Catherine slid into the driver's seat and turned the key. The Aston Martin's engine roared to life, a sound so perfectly tuned it was almost musical. Relief washed over her face. "You did it," she said, a genuine smile transforming her features. She stepped out of the car and reached into her purse, extracting a sleek wallet. "I can't thank you enough, Mr. Matthews." "Ryan," he corrected, wiping his hands on a rag. "And it's no problem, just doing my job." Catherine counted out several bills and handed them to Ryan. "Please take this for your time and expertise." Ryan looked down at the money in his hand and nearly did a double take. She had given him $300, more than double his quoted price. "Ms. Weber, this is too much," he began, but she held up a hand to stop him. "It's Kate, please, and no, it's not too much. You saved me from being stranded in the middle of nowhere. Besides, I know what mechanics in the city would charge for this kind of service, especially for this car." Ryan wanted to protest further, but the thought of the bills waiting on his kitchen table silenced his objections. "Thank you," he said. "Instead, I appreciate it." "Now, about that motel you mentioned," Catherine prompted. "I'm afraid I'll need directions." "Actually," Ryan said, glancing back at his truck, "it might be easier if you just follow me. It's not complicated, but there are a few turns that might be confusing in the dark." Catherine nodded gratefully. "Lead the way." As Ryan walked back to his truck, he noticed her studying the old pickup with interest, her eyes lingering on the faded Matthews Auto Repair logo on the door. He checked on Noah again, who had curled up more tightly under his blanket but was still sound asleep. The drive back to Riverbrook took about 20 minutes, with Catherine's Aston Martin following Ryan's pickup like an exotic fish trailing behind a weathered fishing boat. Ryan couldn't help but glance in his rearview mirror occasionally, wondering what someone like Catherine Weber was doing on a lonely highway in rural Pennsylvania. Business, obviously, but what kind, and why alone? The Riverbrook Inn came into view, its neon vacancy sign casting a red glow into the night. It wasn't much, a single-story motel with maybe 20 rooms, but Tom's sister Diane kept it immaculately clean and had even added some touches that elevated it above the typical roadside accommodation. Ryan pulled into the parking lot and waited for Catherine to park beside him. Noah stirred slightly as the engine shut off. "Dad?" he mumbled sleepily. "Are we home?" "Not yet, bud," Ryan said softly. "Just helping someone with their car. Go back to sleep." Udun, but Noah, catching sight of the unfamiliar woman approaching, was suddenly alert with curiosity. He unbuckled his seatbelt and scrambled to sit upright. "You have a son," Catherine observed, a note of surprise in her voice. "This is Noah," Ryan said, as the boy rubbed his eyes and tried to smooth down his sleep-rumpled hair. "Noah, this is Ms. Weber. Her car broke down, and we helped her out." "Did you fix it, Dad?" Noah asked, pride evident in his voice. "He certainly did," Catherine answered before Ryan could. "Your father is very talented." Noah beamed. "He can fix anything. Once our refrigerator stopped working, and Dad fixed it with just a screwdriver and some tape." Catherine laughed, a warm sound that seemed to surprise even her. "Is that so? Impressive." The motel office. Door opened, and Diane emerged, pulling a sweater around herself against the night chill. Her eyebrows rose slightly at the sight of the Aston Martin, but her welcoming smile never faltered. "Ryan Matthews, do you know what time it is?" She called out good-naturedly. "Are you bringing me customers in the middle of the night now?" "Sorry, Diane," Ryan replied. "Emergency call. Miss Weber needs a room for the night. Her car broke down on the highway. Just Kate is fine," Catherine corrected, extending her hand to Diane. "And I'm very grateful for a place to stay." "Well, you're in luck," Diane said, shaking Catherine's hand. "We've got several rooms available. Nothing fancy, mind you, but clean and comfortable." As the women headed toward the office to handle the check-in, Noah tugged at Ryan's sleeve. Dad, is she rich? Her car looks super expensive. Ryan gently shushed his son. It's not polite to talk about people's money, Noah, but yes, that's a very expensive car. Then why was she all alone on the highway? Don't rich people have drivers? Not all of them, Ryan said, though he'd wondered the same thing. And everyone's car breaks down sometimes, no matter how much money they have. The office door opened again, and Catherine emerged with a room key. She approached Ryan's truck once more. "Thank you again for your help, Ryan," she said. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come along." "Glad I could help," Ryan replied. "If you need anything else while you're in town, Matthews Auto Repair is on Main Street. Can't miss it." Catherine nodded. "I'll remember that." She turned her attention to Noah. "It was nice to meet you, Noah. You have a very skilled father." Noah nodded solemnly. "I know. I'm going to be just like him when I grow up." Something flickered across Catherine's face, a shadow of emotion Ryan couldn't quite identify. But she smiled at Noah, a gentler smile than any she'd shown so far. "That's a worthy ambition," she said softly. Then to Ryan, "Good night, and thank you again." As Ryan drove home, with Noah once again drifting off to sleep beside him, he couldn't shake the feeling that there had been something familiar about Catherine Weber. Not her face or her voice, but something in her manner, in the way she carried herself. It nagged at him, like a bolt that wouldn't quite tighten, but he couldn't place it. By the time he carried Noah back into their house and tucked him into bed, Ryan had dismissed the thought. Catherine Weber was just a stranded motorist with an expensive car and enough money to overtip a small-town mechanic. Tomorrow she would drive to Pittsburgh for her business meeting, and that would be the end of it. Ryan placed the $300 in the kitchen drawer where he kept emergency cash. It would help with the bills, maybe even give him enough to clear that supplier balance. A stroke of luck, that's all it was. As he finally crawled into his own bed, exhaustion overtaking him, Ryan had no way of knowing that his chance encounter with Catherine Weber was about to change his life in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. He had no inkling that the woman he'd helped on the highway was not just wealthy, but powerful. The reclusive CEO of Weber Automotive Industries, one of the largest car manufacturing companies in America. A company currently facing its own crossroads, with Catherine at the wheel, making decisions that would affect thousands of lives. And he certainly had no way of knowing that Catherine Weber had recognized the name Matthews, not from his small repair shop, but from a design patent filed 15 years ago by one Walter Matthews, a brilliant but obscure engineer whose innovative safety system had been acquired by her father's company for a fraction of its worth. A system that had eventually become the cornerstone of Weber Automotive's award-winning safety reputation. As sleep claimed him, Ryan was blissfully unaware that his simple act of roadside assistance had set in motion events that would soon intertwine his fate with Catherine Weber's in ways neither of them could have anticipated. The woman he'd helped was not just passing through his life, she was about to become a central part of it. And in the quiet of her motel room, Catherine Weber sat on the edge of the bed, her laptop open before her, searching for information about Matthews Auto Repair and its owner. Her expression was unreadable as she scrolled through sparse social media profiles and local business listings. Finally, she opened a secure database accessible only to Weber Automotive executives and typed in a search, Walter Matthews. The results made her sit back, her brow furrowed in thought. After a long moment, she closed the laptop and stared out the window at the darkened street of Riverbrook, a town she'd never heard of until tonight, but which suddenly held the key to a mystery she'd been trying to solve for months. "Well, Mr. Ryan Matthews," she murmured to herself, "it seems your father and my father have some unfinished business, and now so do we." Morning light filtered through the thin curtains of the Riverbrook Inn, rousing Catherine Webber from a fitful sleep. The motel bed had been surprisingly comfortable, but her mind had refused to quiet, spinning with the implications of what she'd discovered. Walter Matthews. The name had haunted the margins of her research for months, a footnote in old company. Files that she'd nearly overlooked. Catherine rose and prepared for the day with her usual efficiency. Her overnight bag, always packed in her trunk for unexpected business delays, contained a change of clothes and basic toiletries. Within 30 minutes, she was dressed in another impeccably tailored suit, her hair swept back in its customary style. Only the setting, a modest small-town motel room instead of her penthouse apartment in Detroit, betrayed that this was not a typical morning in the life of Weber Automotive's CEO. She checked her phone. 3 missed calls from her executive assistant, 2 from the head of R&D, and 1 from her brother Michael, the company's CFO. All could wait. Today, she had a more pressing matter to investigate. Catherine stepped outside, the cool morning air a refreshing change from the climate-controlled environments she typically inhabited. Across the street, a small diner called Maggie's showed. Signs of life, lights on, a few trucks parked outside. She realized she was hungry, having skipped dinner the night before. Inside Maggie's, the breakfast rush was just beginning. The diner had a worn but welcoming feel, with red vinyl booths and the comforting aroma of coffee and bacon. Catherine selected a booth near the window and picked up a laminated menu. A middle-aged waitress with a name tag reading Doris approached with a coffee pot. "Morning, hun. You must be our visitor from the city. News travels fast around here." Catherine accepted the coffee with a nod. "I suppose I'm rather conspicuous." Doris chuckled. "Well, that fancy car outside isn't exactly standard issue for Riverbrook. Heard Ryan Matthews fixed you up last night. That boy could rebuild an engine blindfolded, just like his dad." Catherine's interest sharpened. "You knew his father?" "Walter, sure did. Everyone around here did. Salt of the earth, that man. Brilliant with machines, too. Some said he was too smart for Riverbrook, but he loved this town." Doris's expression softened. With nostalgia. Shame what happened. First losing his daughter-in-law like that, then his own health going. Left Ryan with a lot on his plate. Catherine processed this information carefully. Ryan mentioned his father passed away 5 years ago. "Cancer," Doris confirmed, her voice lowering. "Fought it hard, but in the end." She shook her head. "What can I get you for breakfast, hun?" "Whatever's most popular," Catherine replied, setting aside the menu. "Maggie's special it is. 3 eggs, bacon, home fries and toast." Doris winked. "Don't worry, we won't tell anyone back in the city you ate real food." As Doris walked away, Catherine sipped her coffee and contemplated her next move. Matthews Auto Repair would be her first stop. She needed to see the operation for herself, to understand exactly who Ryan Matthews was and what he knew about his father's work. The breakfast arrived quickly, a generous plate that would have fed Catherine for 2 days in her normal routine. She surprised herself by eating most of it, the simple, hearty food satisfying a hunger she hadn't realized was so acute. When she requested the bill, Doris waved her off. "Already taken care of." Catherine frowned. "By whom?" Mayor Griffith was in earlier, said to put the visiting executive's breakfast on his tab. "Like I said, news travels fast." Doris smiled. "He figures anyone driving a car like yours might have business opportunities for Riverbrook." "I see," Catherine said, slightly disconcerted by the small-town grapevine. She left a $20 bill on the table despite Doris's protests and headed out. The morning had fully bloomed now, the streets of Riverbrook coming to life. Catherine navigated her Aston Martin slowly down Main Street, taking in the modest storefronts and small businesses that formed the backbone of the town's economy. It was a far cry from the gleaming corporate headquarters of Weber Automotive in Detroit, with its thousands of employees and cutting-edge facilities. Yet there was something about the authenticity of Riverbrook that tugged at a long-forgotten part of her. Matthews Auto Repair was easy to spot, just as Ryan had said. The single-story brick building stood on the corner of Main and Elm, its large garage doors open to reveal a workshop space inside. The sign, hand-painted and showing its age, hung above the entrance, declaring, "Matthews Auto Repair, we fix what others can't," in bold letters. Catherine parked her Aston Martin in the small lot and took a moment to observe. The shop wasn't fancy, but it was well organized and clean. Through the open bay doors, she could see Ryan working on an older model SUV, his movements confident and practiced. A small office area was visible to one side, where a teenage girl sat at a desk, answering phones and managing paperwork. As Catherine approached, Ryan looked up from his work. Surprise flashed across his face, quickly replaced by a professional smile. "Ms. Weber," he greeted her, wiping his hands on a rag. "Didn't expect to see you this morning. How's the Aston?" "Running perfectly," Catherine replied. "Your fix was excellent, and please, it's Kate." Ryan nodded. "Glad to hear it. Something else I can help you with?" Catherine glanced around the shop, noting the equipment, a mix of traditional tools and some newer diagnostic machinery. It was modest but functional. "I thought I'd stop by and see your operation. I have an interest in independent repair shops." Ryan's expression turned curious. "An interest? What kind of interest?" Before Catherine could answer, the teenage girl from the office appeared at Ryan's side. "Mr. Matthews, Mrs. Garcia called. She's bringing in her Corolla at noon. Says the check engine light is on again." "Thanks, Zoe," Ryan replied. "Tell her we'll take a look, but it's probably just that loose gas cap she keeps forgetting to tighten." The girl nodded and returned to the office, giving Catherine a curious glance as she went. "Zoe's my part-time office manager," Ryan explained. "A high school senior, wants to be a mechanical engineer." Catherine nodded approvingly. "You're teaching her?" "What I can. She's got a natural talent for it. Reminds me of..." He paused, then continued, "She's a good kid." Catherine caught the hesitation but didn't press. Instead, she gestured toward the shop. "Would you mind showing me around?" Ryan seemed puzzled by her interest, but obliged. "Not much to see, but sure." He guided her through the space, pointing out the equipment and explaining his workflow. Catherine listened intently, asking occasional questions that revealed a deeper knowledge of automotive mechanics than Ryan had initially assumed. "You know a lot about repair shops for someone who drives an Aston Martin," he observed, his tone slightly suspicious. Catherine offered a measured smile. "I'm in the automotive industry. It pays to understand all aspects of the business." "What company?" Ryan asked. Catherine hesitated. She rarely concealed her identity. In fact, she was usually announced wherever she went. But something held her back. The moment Ryan knew who she was, everything would change. She needed to understand more first. "I'm a consultant," she said, finally. "I work with various manufacturers on operational efficiency." It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Ryan seemed to sense this, but didn't challenge her. "Well, as you can see, we're pretty efficient here by necessity," he said, gesturing to the modest surroundings. "Not a lot of room for waste when you're running on tight margins." The tour ended at a small back room that functioned as both a break area and a makeshift design space. On one wall hung several framed patents, Walter Matthews's name clearly visible on each one. Catherine moved closer, studying them with interest. "Your father was an inventor." Ryan's expression softened with pride. Yeah, he was always tinkering, coming up with better ways to do things. Most of these are for specialized tools he designed to make repairs easier. Catherine pointed to one particular patent, dated 15 years earlier. And this one? Ryan's face changed, a shadow crossing his features. That's different. That was his breakthrough. A progressive crumpled zone system for vehicle safety. He spent years developing it. The patent matched the one Catherine had found in the Weber Automotive Archives, the one her father had acquired for a fraction of its value. Up close, she could see the brilliance of the design. Walter Matthews had been ahead of his time. "What happened with it?" she asked carefully. Ryan's jaw tightened. "A big auto company bought the patent, paid enough to keep the shop going through a rough patch, but nothing close to what it was worth. Dad didn't care about getting rich, though. He just wanted his design to save lives." Catherine felt a knot form in her stomach. The narrative in Weber Automotive's files had been very different, portraying Walter Matthews as an amateur inventor who'd been grateful for the company's interest. But Ryan's version aligned more closely with the discrepancies she'd found. In the acquisition documents, "Which company?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Weber Automotive," Ryan said, his tone flat. "Never heard from them again after they got what they wanted. Dad always wondered if they even used his design. Then a few years later we started seeing their ads about their revolutionary new safety system." He shrugged, the gesture failing to mask his bitterness. "That's how it goes, I guess. Little. Guys like us don't matter much to companies that size." Catherine felt the weight of his words. Weber Automotive, her family's company, her company now, had indeed built its reputation on that safety system. It had saved countless lives and generated billions in revenue, all based on Walter Matthews' innovation. "Maybe they didn't realize," she began, but Ryan cut her off with a hollow laugh. "They knew exactly what they were doing. That's how business works at that level." He seemed to catch himself, his professional demeanor returning. "Anyway, ancient history now." Before Catherine could respond, a small voice called out from the front of the shop, "Dad, we're here!" Ryan's expression immediately brightened as Noah came bounding into the shop, his backpack bouncing against his small frame. Behind him walked a woman in her 50s, Ms. Greta, Catherine presumed from their conversation the night before. "Hey, champ," Ryan greeted his son, kneeling down for a hug. "How was school?" "Good, I got an A on my math test." Noah spotted Catherine, and his eyes widened in recognition. "It's the lady with the fancy car." Catherine smiled despite herself. "Hello, Noah." Ms. Greta approached, curious. "Ryan, aren't you going to introduce me to your friend?" "Sorry, Greta. This is Kate Weber. Her car broke down on the highway last night. Kate, this is my neighbor, Greta Simmons. She helps with Noah after school." Greta extended a hand, which Catherine shook. "Pleasure to meet you, dear. That's quite a car you have." "Thank you," Catherine replied. "It's been very reliable until last night." Noah tugged at his father's sleeve. "Dad, can I show Miss Kate my drawings? I made one of her car." Ryan glanced at Catherine apologetically. "You don't have to. I'd love to see them," Catherine interrupted, surprising both Ryan and herself with her sincerity. Noah beamed and dug through his backpack, producing a slightly crumpled paper. The drawing showed a blue car that was unmistakably meant to be her Aston Martin, with a stick figure standing beside it, presumably Catherine herself. "This is really good, Noah," Catherine said, genuinely impressed by the detail the 8-year-old had captured. "You have a talent for cars, just like your dad." Noah's chest puffed with pride. "Grandpa, too. Dad says Grandpa could draw a whole car from memory." "He could," Ryan confirmed, ruffling his son's hair. "And he could tell what was wrong with an engine just by listening to it." Catherine handed the drawing back to Noah, who carefully returned it to his backpack. "I have homework," he announced, "but after, can we work on the model car, Dad?" Sure thing, bud. Go set up in the office and I'll be there to help in a bit. As Noah scampered off with Greta following behind, Ryan turned back to Catherine. Sorry about the interruption. Don't apologize, Catherine said. He's a wonderful boy. Ryan's expression softened. He's everything to me. He hesitated, then added, his mother Lisa died when he was 3. Car accident, drunk driver. Crossed the center line. Gee, the personal disclosure caught Catherine off guard. I'm so sorry. Ryan nodded in acknowledgement. Dad helped us through it. Then when he got sick, he shook his head. Life throws curveballs sometimes. You just have to keep swinging. Something in his resilience touched Catherine. In her world of corporate power plays and billion-dollar decisions, people rarely spoke with such unvarnished honesty about personal struggles. You've done well by him, she said quietly. That's evident. Ryan studied her for a moment, as if trying to reconcile the elegant executive with this unexpected moment of warmth. Thanks. An awkward silence fell between them, broken when Ryan's phone buzzed. He checked it and sighed. Mrs. Garcia's here early with her Corolla. I should get to that. Of course, Catherine said, stepping back toward the exit. I've taken up enough of your time? Ryan hesitated, then asked, How long are you staying in Riverbrook? I'm not sure, Catherine replied truthfully. My plans are flexible at the moment. Ryan nodded, seemingly satisfied with the ambiguous answer. Well, if you need anything else while you're here, you know where to find me. Catherine thanked him and walked back to her car, aware of the curious glances from people passing by on the street. The Aston Martin was clearly a novelty in Riverbrook. As she slid into the driver's seat, her phone rang, Michael Weber calling for the 3rd time that morning. With a sigh, she answered, Kate, finally! Her brother's voice came through, tense and impatient. Where are you? The board meeting is in 3 hours, and Preston is already making noise about your absence. Catherine started the engine, the Aston Martin purring to life. I'm handling something important, Michael, something that can't wait. More important than the vote on the Takahashi merger? Kate, this is the deal you've been pushing for months. If you're not here to defend it, postpone the meeting, Catherine interrupted, her decision crystallizing as she spoke. Tell them I'm conducting due diligence on a critical matter related to the company's foundation. Its foundation? Michael repeated, confused. What are you talking about? Where are you? Catherine watched as Ryan returned to the SUV he'd been working on. Noah now sitting on a stool nearby, homework spread on a workbench as he occasionally looked up to observe his father. I'm in a small town called Riverbrook, she said, and I think I've found something that changes everything. What could possibly be in Riverbrook that... The truth, Michael, Catherine cut him off, about the safety system that built our empire, about what father did to acquire it. Silence fell on the other end of the line. When Michael spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled. Kate, whatever you think you've found, remember that the past is past. We have responsibilities to shareholders, to employees. Yes, we do, Catherine agreed. And to the truth. Postpone the meeting, Michael. I'll be back when I'm finished here. She ended the call before he could argue further and sat for a moment contemplating her next move. The practical thing would be to return to Detroit immediately, to handle the merger vote and deal with this Matthews situation through lawyers and proper channels. But something kept her in Riverbrook. Perhaps it was the nagging sense of a wrong that needed to be righted, or perhaps it was the image of Ryan Matthews working honest hours in a shop his father had built, teaching his son the same values of integrity and craftsmanship that had been sacrificed in the name of corporate profit. Catherine made her decision. Reaching for her phone again, she called her executive assistant. Janet, I need you to pull all the files we have on the Matthews safety system acquisition. Everything, and I mean everything, including Father's personal notes, if they exist. Yes, Ms. Weber. May I ask why? Because I'm about to right a 15-year-old wrong, Catherine replied, and I need all the facts before I do. After ending the call, Catherine drove away from Matthews Auto Repair, but not toward the highway that would take her back to Pittsburgh and eventually Detroit. Instead, she headed toward the Riverbrook Town Hall, a modest building in the center of town. If she was going to understand this place and the Matthews family's role in it, she needed to start at the beginning. The town hall housed the local historical society in its basement level, a small but carefully maintained archive of Riverbrook's past. The elderly volunteer who greeted Catherine seemed delighted to have a visitor, especially one asking about Walter Matthews. Oh, Walter was a fixture in Riverbrook, the woman, who introduced herself as Mrs. Holloway, explained as she pulled out folders and old newspaper clippings. His father started the repair shop during the Depression, and Walter took it over in the 70s. He modernized it, kept up with the changing technology. Cars got more complicated, but Walter always stayed ahead of the curve. Catherine examined the materials with genuine interest. Photos showed a man with Ryan's same steady gaze and capable hands, often surrounded by community members. Walter Matthews had been beloved in Riverbrook, serving on the town council, coaching Little League, volunteering at the high school to teach automotive classes. He was an inventor too, Mrs. Holloway continued, pulling out a yellowed newspaper article. This was his biggest achievement, made the front page of our local paper. The headline read, "Local Mechanic Patents Revolutionary Safety System." The article detailed Walter's years of research and development, working nights and weekends on a system that could dramatically improve vehicle safety in collisions. There was a photo of Walter holding the patent documents, pride evident in his smile. What happened after this? Catherine asked, though she already knew part of the answer. Mrs. Holloway's expression dimmed slightly. Well, a big company bought the patent. Walter never talked much about the details, but people noticed the shop got some new equipment around that time. Then a few years later, that same company started advertising a safety system that looked mighty similar to Walter's. Design, Weber Automotive, Catherine said quietly. That's the one. Mrs. Holloway nodded. Walter never complained, at least not publicly. Said he was just glad his idea was out there, potentially saving lives. That was the kind of man he was. Catherine felt the weight of this legacy pressing down on her. Her father, Harold Weber, had built Weber Automotive into an industry giant through savvy business moves and technological innovation. But this acquisition, this taking of Walter Matthews' life's work for a pittance, cast a shadow over that legacy, a shadow that now extended to her own leadership. There's something else you might find interesting, Mrs. Holloway said, pulling out a final folder. Walter's wife, Margaret, was a photographer. She documented everything. After she passed, Walter donated her archives to us. The folder contained dozens of photographs chronicling the Matthews family and their integration into Riverbrook life. Catherine saw images of a younger Ryan with his parents, then with a pretty young woman who must have been Lisa, then holding an infant Noah. The progression of joy and loss was visible through the careful organization of these family moments. One photo in particular caught Catherine's attention. It showed Walter in his shop, working on a detailed scale model of what appeared to be his safety system design. Behind him on the wall was a complex diagram with notes and calculations. Do you know if Walter kept his original designs? Catherine asked. The detailed engineering work behind the patent? Mrs. Holloway shook her head. I couldn't say for certain, but if he did, they'd likely still be at the shop. Walter was meticulous about documentation, said you never knew when you might need to refer back to your own thinking. Catherine nodded, thanking the woman for her help. As she prepared to leave, Mrs. Holloway asked the question Catherine had been anticipating. "If you don't mind my asking, dear, why the interest in Walter Matthews? Are you writing a book or something?" Catherine considered her answer carefully. "I'm researching innovations from independent inventors and their impact on the automotive industry. Walter's story is significant." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the full truth either. Catherine was becoming uncomfortably familiar with that grey area. As she left the town hall, Catherine noticed the afternoon was advancing. Her phone showed multiple missed calls from Michael and other Weber automotive executives. The board meeting would have been postponed by now, likely causing speculation and concern. Weber automotive stock might even take a temporary hit when news broke that the CEO had unexpectedly delayed a vote on a major merger. None of that seemed to matter as much as it should have. Catherine found herself driving back toward Matthews Auto Repair, drawn by questions that still needed answers and a growing sense that she had a personal responsibility to address this situation. The shop was quieter now as the business day wound down. Through the window, Catherine could see Ryan and Noah seated at a workbench, bent over what appeared to be a model car kit. Their heads were close together, Ryan's hands occasionally guiding Noah's smaller ones as they worked. The scene was so peaceful, so fundamentally different from Catherine's usual surroundings, that she hesitated to interrupt. But as she watched, her phone buzzed with an incoming email. It was from Janet, her assistant. "Found all files on Matthews' acquisition. Sending secure link. Call me when you've reviewed. There's something you should know." Catherine opened the link, scanning. Through the digitized documents, most were familiar from her earlier research. The official acquisition paperwork, the patent transfer, the financial records of the modest payment to Walter Matthews. But there was one file she hadn't seen before, labeled simply HW Personal. Notes Riggs Matthews System, her father's private notes. Catherine took a deep breath and opened the file. The document was brief, but damning. Harold Weber had recognized the genius of Walter's design immediately. Internal assessments had valued the patent at 50 times what they'd offered. But Harold had leveraged Walter's financial difficulties, medical bills from his wife's recent cancer treatments, to secure the patent for a fraction of its worth. The final paragraph made Catherine's stomach turn. Matthews clearly doesn't understand what he's giving away. His focus on his wife's health has clouded his business judgment. This acquisition will save Weber Automotive years of R&D and millions in development costs. The return on investment will be astronomical once we integrate this technology into our production models. Sometimes opportunity requires capitalizing on others' misfortunes. Catherine closed the file, her hands slightly shaking. She had always known her father was a shrewd businessman. But this calculated exploitation of a man's personal tragedy crossed a line she hadn't known existed in his moral framework. Looking back at the shop, at Ryan and Noah still absorbed in their project, Catherine made her decision. She stepped out of her car and walked toward the entrance, not yet knowing exactly what she would say, but certain that something needed to be done. The bell above the door jingled as she entered. Ryan looked up, surprise evident on his face. "Kate," he greeted her. "Twice in one day. Is something wrong with the car again?" "No," Catherine said, her voice steadier than she felt. "The car is fine. I need to talk to you about something else, something important." Ryan seemed to sense the gravity in her tone. He turned to Noah. "Hey, bud, why don't you go take Rusty for a quick walk around the block? He's been cooped up in the office all afternoon." Noah looked between the adults, clearly curious, but nodded. "Okay, Dad." He hopped down from his stool and went to retrieve the small dog Catherine hadn't noticed, sleeping in a bed near the office door. Once Noah and Rusty had gone, Ryan gestured toward the small break room. "Whatever it is, sounds like we should sit down." Catherine followed him into the room, gathering her thoughts. The framed patterns on the wall seemed to watch her accusingly now. "I haven't been entirely honest with you, Ryan," she began, meeting his gaze directly. "My name is Catherine Weber. I'm the CEO of Weber Automotive Industries." Ryan's expression shifted from confusion to recognition, then to a carefully controlled neutrality. "Weber Automotive," he repeated. "Well, that explains the interest in my father's patents." Catherine nodded. "I've been researching the acquisition of your father's safety system design. There are discrepancies in our records, things that didn't add up. Like how a multinational corporation managed to buy a revolutionary safety design for pocket change." Ryan's voice was calm, but Catherine could sense the years of suppressed anger beneath it. "Yes," she admitted, "among other things." Ryan leaned back in his chair, studying her. "So what now? You're here to make sure there are no legal loose ends, no claims the Matthews family might make." "No," Catherine said firmly. "I'm here because a wrong was done. My father, Harold Weber, he took advantage of your father's situation. The medical bills for your mother, the financial pressure your family was under. He knew exactly what the patent was worth, and he deliberately underpaid." Ryan's jaw tightened. "My father suspected as much, but by the time he realized it, the deal was done. And then, Mom died anyway." He shook his head. He never cared about the money for himself. He just wanted to take care of her, to give her the best treatment possible. The simple tragedy of it struck Catherine deeply. "I'm sorry," she said, the words feeling wholly inadequate. Ryan studied her, his expression unreadable. "Why are you really here, Catherine? Why now, after 15 years? It was a fair question, one Catherine had been asking herself. "Because I only recently discovered the full truth, and because I believe in setting things right, even belatedly." Ryan's expression remained skeptical. "Setting things right how, exactly? Weber Automotive has built an empire on my father's design. You can't undo that." "No," Catherine agreed. "I can't change the past, but I can acknowledge it honestly and make amends for it." She reached into her bag and removed a folder containing documents she'd had Janet prepare remotely and email to a local print shop for pickup. "This is a proposal," she explained, sliding the folder across to Ryan. "A retroactive licensing agreement that would compensate your family appropriately for the use of Walter's design over the past 15 years, plus ongoing royalties for as long as Weber Automotive uses any aspect of the system." Ryan opened the folder, his eyes widening slightly as he saw the figure on the first page. "This is substantial." "It's fair," Catherine corrected. "It's what should have been offered in the first place." Ryan flipped through the documents, slowly, his expression thoughtful. "Why would you do this? Your shareholders won't be happy." "Probably not," Catherine admitted, "but it's the right thing to do. And more practically, Weber Automotive is facing challenges. We've lost our innovative edge. We've become too corporate, too removed from the real mechanics of the industry." She gestured around the modest shop. "Places like this, independent operations run by people who understand cars from the ground up. They're becoming rare, but they're where real innovation happens. Where people like your father develop ideas that change the industry." Ryan set the folder down, his gaze steady. "So this is what a PR move? The wealthy corporation makes amends to the small-town mechanic? Nice headline." Catherine met his gaze unflinchingly. "It's not about headlines, it's about recognition. Your father deserved credit for his work. He deserved to be properly compensated for his innovation. I can't change what my father did, but I can try to make it right now." She hesitated, then added, "And there's another component to the proposal, one that goes beyond financial compensation." Ryan raised an eyebrow, waiting. "Weber Automotive needs fresh thinking. We've become stagnant, too insular." Catherine leaned forward slightly. I'd like to establish an innovation center here in Riverbrook, a place where independent mechanics and engineers can develop and test new ideas with proper funding and support, and I'd like you to run it. Ryan's surprise was evident. Me? Run an innovation center for Weber Automotive? Catherine nodded. You have your father's talent, and more importantly, you have his integrity. The center would operate independently, with its own budget and governance. You'd report directly to me, no corporate layers in between. Ryan fell silent, clearly processing the unexpected offer. Catherine continued, You wouldn't have to give up the shop. In fact, part of the proposal includes expanding it, upgrading the equipment. It would be the practical testing ground for the innovation center's ideas. And Noah? Ryan asked, his priority clear. We'd ensure the schedule works for your family situation, Catherine assured him. This isn't about uprooting your life. It's about building something new while honoring what your father created. The bell above the shop door jingled, signaling Noah's return with Rusty. Ryan glanced toward the sound, then back at Catherine. I need time to think about this, he said honestly. It's a lot to take in. Catherine nodded. Of course, take all the time you need. She stood to leave, then added, Whatever you decide about the Innovation Center, the licensing agreement stands. That's about making things right. The rest is about moving forward. As she prepared to leave, Noah bounded in with Rusty, trotting behind him. Dad, Rusty found a really big stick, but I told him he couldn't bring it inside. Ryan smiled at his son, the tension of the previous conversation momentarily forgotten. Good call, bud. Shop rules are shop rules, even for Rusty. Noah noticed Catherine and grinned. Hi, Ms. Kate. Are you getting your car fixed again? Catherine shook her head, returning his smile. No, just talking to your dad about some business. Your car model is looking great. Noah beamed with a pride. Dad's teaching me how to do the tiny parts. It's hard, but I'm getting better. I'm sure you are, Catherine said warmly. She turned to Ryan. I'm staying at the Riverbrook Inn again tonight. Perhaps we could continue our conversation over dinner, unless you have other plans. Ryan hesitated, then nodded. Dinner would be fine. I'll need to bring Noah, though. Of course, Catherine replied. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. As Catherine left the shop and returned to her car, she felt oddly lighter than she had in years. The path forward wasn't clear yet. The Weber Automotive Board would resist her plans. Michael would call her reckless. The financial press would speculate wildly about her motives. But for the first time in a long time, she was certain she was doing the right thing. Her phone buzzed with another call from Michael. This time she answered. Kate, what the hell is going on? Her brother demanded. Janet's preparing licensing. Agreements worth millions for some mechanic in the middle of nowhere. Not some mechanic, Michael, Catherine corrected him. Walter Matthews, the real inventor of the safety system that built our company. That's ancient history, Michael protested. Legally, we own the patent outright. There's no obligation to... It's not about legal obligation, Catherine interrupted. It's about moral obligation. It's about who we are as a company and what we stand for. Michael was silent for a moment. This is about father, isn't it? About what you found in his papers. Partly, Catherine admitted, but it's also about the future. We've lost our way, Michael. We've forgotten what actually matters in this business. And what's that? Her brother asked, his tone somewhere between skeptical and curious. Catherine looked back at Matthew's auto repair, where Ryan was now closing up for the day. Noah, helping with the final tasks. People, she said simply. People who understand cars inside and out. People who see problems and imagine solutions. People like Walter Matthews and his son. And you think this? What innovation center in some small town is going to save Weber Automotive? I think it's a start, Catherine replied. I'm having dinner with Ryan Matthews tonight to discuss the details. I'll call you tomorrow with an update." She ended the call before Michael could argue further and sat in her car for a moment, contemplating the unexpected turn her life had taken in just 24 hours. A breakdown on a lonely highway had led her here, to a small repair shop in a town she'd never heard of, to a family whose story was inextricably linked with her own, to a chance at redemption not just for her father's actions but for the company's soul. As she started the Aston Martin and pulled away from the curb, Catherine caught a glimpse of Ryan and Noah in her rearview mirror, locking up the shop together. She couldn't help but wonder what Walter Matthews would think of her proposal, of her attempt to right a long-ago wrong. Perhaps tonight, over dinner with his son and grandson, she might begin to find out. The Riverbrook diner glowed warm against the deepening twilight, its windows fogged with the breath of conversation and home-cooked meals. Catherine had suggested this local establishment rather than the upscale restaurant in the neighboring town that Ryan had expected. It was a deliberate choice. She wanted to meet on his territory, to immerse herself in the community that had shaped the Matthews family. Ryan arrived precisely at 7, Noah's small hand clasped in his. The boy looked freshly scrubbed, his hair still damp from what had clearly been a hasty bath. Ryan himself had changed into a clean button-down shirt and jeans, casual but presentable. Catherine noted the effort and appreciated it. "Miss Kate," Noah called out when he spotted her at a corner booth. Several diners turned at the exclamation, their curious gazes lingering on Catherine's designer outfit, so incongruous in this humble setting. "Hello, Noah," Catherine greeted him with a genuine smile. "I saved us the best seat in the house. At least, that's what Doris told me." "You've met Doris already?" Ryan asked as they slid into the booth. "This morning," Catherine confirmed. "She's quite the conversationalist." Ryan's lips quirked into a half-smile. "That's one way to put it. Doris knows everything about everyone in Riverbrook." "Including you," Catherine noted. "Especially me," Ryan agreed. "She's been serving my family breakfast since before I was born." As if summoned by her name, Doris appeared tableside with menus and a knowing smile. "Well, well, quite the dinner party we have here." Her eyes twinkled as she glanced between Ryan and Catherine. Noah beamed up at her. "Hi, Ms. Doris. Dad says I can have chocolate milk if I finish all my vegetables." "That sounds like a fair deal to me," Doris replied, winking at him. "The usual for you, Ryan?" Ryan nodded. "Thanks, Doris." "And for you, hon?" Doris asked Catherine. "What would you recommend?" Catherine asked, genuinely curious. "The meatloaf is what made this place famous," Doris said proudly. "Walter Matthews used to say it was the only thing better than Margaret's cooking, though he only said that when Margaret wasn't around to hear it." Ryan chuckled at the memory. Dad would come home smelling like Doris's meatloaf, and Mom would pretend to be offended. "Duh, I'll have the meatloaf then," Catherine decided, handing back the menu. As Doris walked away, Noah pulled a small toy car from his pocket and began rolling it across the table. "This is like Ms. Kate's car," he informed his father seriously. "I'm pretending it broke down and needs fixing." "Is that so?" Ryan asked, amused. Noah nodded vigorously. "But don't worry, Dad. I'm going to fix it good as new." Catherine watched the interaction with interest. Noah's admiration for his father was evident in every word, every gesture. In her world of boardrooms and executive suites, genuine relationships often took a back seat to power dynamics and political alliances. The simple, unguarded love between father and son was both touching and slightly foreign to her experience. "Did your dad teach you about cars too, Miss Kate?" Noah asked suddenly, looking up from his toy. Catherine smiled slightly. "No, not really. My father was more interested in the business side of cars, selling them, marketing them, but not fixing them." Noah sounded genuinely perplexed by this concept. "Not fixing them," Catherine confirmed. "That's sad. Noah declared with a child's blunt honesty. Fixing things is the best part. Ryan shot Catherine an apologetic glance, but she shook her head slightly. Your dad and grandfather are special that way, Noah. Most people who run companies don't know how to fix cars themselves, which is a problem, Ryan added quietly. Catherine met his gaze. Yes, it is. Their drinks arrived, coffee for the adults and chocolate milk for Noah, despite the vegetable agreement not yet being fulfilled. Doris winked at the boy as she set it down. Our secret. When she had gone, Catherine redirected the conversation. Have you had a chance to look at the proposal more carefully? Ryan nodded, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. I have. It's generous. It's fair, Catherine corrected. There's a difference. Fair would have been paying my father what? The patent was worth 15 years ago, Ryan said, keeping his voice low so Noah wouldn't catch the undercurrent of tension. The boy was absorbed in a coloring sheet Doris had provided, his tongue caught between his teeth in concentration. You're right, Catherine acknowledged, and I can't change that, but I can try to make it right now. Ryan studied her, his expression guarded but not hostile. Why now? Why you? Your father built Weber Automotive into what it is today. You could have just continued on his path. Catherine considered her answer carefully. Because unlike my father, I believe businesses have responsibilities beyond profit margins. Because the safety system your father designed has saved thousands of lives, and he deserves recognition for that. And because Weber Automotive has lost its way. Lost its way how? We've become disconnected from the heart of what we do, Catherine explained. We've grown so large, so corporate, that we've forgotten what matters. Innovation happens on shop floors like yours, not in boardrooms like mine. Their food arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. Noah's eyes widened at the size of his burger, while Catherine found herself genuinely impressed by the meatloaf, simple but perfectly executed, with a depth of flavor that belied its humble appearance. This is excellent, she commented after her first bite. Ryan smiled, a hint of local pride showing through. Riverbrook isn't much, but what we do well. As they ate, the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Noah's school, the quirks of small-town life, the mechanical intricacies of Catherine's Aston Martin. Catherine found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did in business settings. There was something refreshingly direct about Ryan's communication style. No corporate doublespeak, no hidden agendas, just straightforward discussion. After Noah had proudly finished his burger and vegetables, earning a second chocolate milk in the process, Ryan steered the conversation back to business. This innovation center idea, he began, it sounds good in theory, but how would it actually work? Weber Automotive is headquartered in Detroit. Riverbrook is hardly a transportation hub. Catherine leaned forward slightly. That's precisely the point. I don't want it connected to corporate headquarters. I want it independent, free, to pursue ideas without bureaucracy. Modern communication technology means you can collaborate with the main engineering teams remotely when needed. And the budget? Substantial and secure, Catherine assured him. A dedicated endowment, untouchable by quarterly budget reviews or cost-cutting initiatives. Ryan considered this, and I'd have hiring authority, because if we're going to do this right, I know some brilliant mechanics who never got engineering degrees but could innovate circles around most college graduates. Catherine smiled. That's exactly the kind of thinking I'm looking for. Yes, you'd have hiring authority. My only requirement is that we establish an apprenticeship program for high school students, especially young women interested in automotive engineering. Like Zoe, Ryan nodded, referring to his teenage office manager. Exactly like Zoe, Catherine agreed. Talent is being wasted because we've created artificial barriers to entry in this industry. I want to change that." Noah, who had been quietly coloring, suddenly tugged at Ryan's sleeve. "Dad, can I go say hi to Mr. Jenkins? He's over there." He pointed toward an elderly man seated at the counter. Ryan glanced over. "Sure, bud. Just for a minute, though." As Noah scampered off, Catherine watched him navigate the diner with confidence, greeting several patrons by name on his way. "He's very at home here. He knows everyone, and everyone knows him," Ryan confirmed. "That's Riverbrook. It has its downsides, but for raising a kid, there's something to be said for a place where the whole town looks out for your child." Catherine nodded thoughtfully. Her own childhood had been vastly different. Private schools, carefully selected. Playmates, every interaction monitored and evaluated for its social value. Her father had been building a dynasty, and her upbringing had been designed to prepare her for her role in it. "The licensing agreement," Ryan said, bringing her back to the present. "The retroactive payments. The board will fight you on this." Catherine's expression hardened slightly. "Let them. I'm still majority shareholder." "Even so, it's a lot of money for a company to suddenly part with, especially for something they've considered a closed matter for 15 years. Weber Automotive made billions from your father's design," Catherine said firmly. "The licensing fee is fair compensation, less than we would have paid if we'd licensed it properly in the first place, adjusted for inflation and revenue generated." Ryan studied her for a long moment. "You know this could hurt your position at the company, your father's legacy." "My father's legacy is complicated," Catherine replied. "He built something remarkable, but he also made choices I can't defend. I have to establish my own legacy now." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken by Noah's return. He climbed back into the booth, proudly displaying a quarter that Mr. Jenkins had given him for the gumball machine. As the meal concluded, Catherine insisted on paying, despite Ryan's protests. "Business dinner," she declared, "tax deductible." Outside, the evening had fully settled in, stars visible in the clear sky above Riverbrook, a sight rarely seen in Detroit with its perpetual light pollution. Noah tilted his head back, pointing excitedly at constellations Ryan had taught him to recognize. "I should get him home," Ryan said. "School night." Catherine nodded. "Of course, but before you go, have you made a decision about my proposal?" Ryan met her gaze steadily. "I need to sleep on it. This isn't just about money or opportunity. It's about my father's legacy too, and Noah's future." "I understand," Catherine said. "When will you let me know?" "Tomorrow," Ryan promised. "I'll stop by the inn in the morning before I open the shop." Catherine watched as Ryan and Noah walked to their truck, the boy chattering animatedly about something that made his father laugh. She found herself envying the simplicity of their connection, the obvious joy they took in each other's company. Her phone buzzed. "Michael again." With a sigh, she answered. "The board is in an uproar," her brother said without preamble. "Preston is talking about calling an emergency meeting to discuss your erratic behavior." "What the hell are you doing, Kate?" "My job," she replied calmly, "which includes rectifying past wrongs and positioning the company for future success. By giving away millions to some random mechanic, by proposing an innovation center in a town no one's ever heard of, the PR team is going crazy trying to figure out how to spin this." "Don't spin it," Catherine said firmly. "Tell the truth. Weber Automotive is acknowledging an ethical lapse in its past dealings and making amends. We're also investing in grassroots innovation by establishing a development center focused on practical automotive solutions." Michael was silent for a moment. "You really believe in this, don't you?" "I do," Catherine confirmed. "More than I've believed in anything in a long time. The Takahashi merger. will still happen, Catherine interrupted, but on terms that reflect our renewed commitment to ethical business practices. You're changing everything, Michael said, his tone a mixture of awe and concern. No, Catherine replied, looking up at the stars. I'm just remembering what should have mattered all along. After ending the call, Catherine walked slowly back to the motel, her mind racing with plans and possibilities. The Innovation Center was just the beginning. If Ryan agreed, and she believed he would, it could become a model for a new kind of corporate innovation pipeline, one that valued practical expertise alongside theoretical knowledge. The next morning, Catherine woke early and prepared for the day with her customary efficiency. By 7, she was seated in the motel's small breakfast area, her laptop open to a secure connection to Weber Automotive's internal systems. Overnight, Janet had sent more documents related to Walter Matthews's patent, internal memos, engineering assessments, even her father's personal correspondence with the patent attorneys who had handled the acquisition. The picture they painted was even clearer now. Walter Matthews hadn't just created a useful safety feature. He had developed a comprehensive approach to vehicle safety that was years ahead of its time. Weber Automotive's engineers had immediately recognized its value, estimating it would save the company 5 to 7 years of R&D and potentially prevent thousands of fatalities annually once implemented. And yet, Harold Weber had authorized an offer that amounted to little more than a token payment, knowing Walter's financial vulnerability due to his wife's illness would force him to accept. A knock at the door pulled Catherine from her reading. She opened it to find Ryan standing there, his expression thoughtful but resolved. "Good morning," he greeted her. "Sorry it's so early. I wanted to catch you before you left." "Not at all," Catherine replied, stepping aside to let him in. "I've been up for hours, comes with the job." Ryan nodded in understanding. "Same here. Early mornings are the only quiet time in a small business." Catherine gestured toward the small table, where her laptop sat. "Coffee? It's not great, but it's hot." "Already had 2 cups, but thanks." Ryan remained standing, his posture suggesting he wasn't planning to stay long. "I've made my decision about your proposal." Catherine waited, sensing he had more to say before revealing his answer. "I spoke with Henry Larson last night," Ryan continued. "He was my dad's best friend, worked with him on a lot of his projects. I needed perspective from someone who knew what Dad would have wanted. And," Catherine prompted when he paused, "and Henry reminded me of something important. Dad never cared about getting rich. He cared about making cars safer. He used to say that every time he fixed a car, he was potentially saving a life." Ryan's eyes held Catherine's steadily. The safety system, that was his legacy. Not the money it should have earned, but the lives it saved. Catherine nodded, understanding dawning. "So you're declining the licensing agreement?" "No." Ryan surprised her. "I'm accepting it, but with conditions." "What conditions?" "No. First, the bulk of the retroactive payment goes into a foundation in my father's name, the Walter Matthews Automotive Safety Foundation. It will fund scholarships for students interested in automotive engineering, with preference given to those who can't afford college otherwise." Catherine nodded slowly. "That's perfect, actually. Weber Automotive could match the funding." "Second," Ryan continued, "the Innovation Center proceeds, but with an expanded mission. Not just developing new technologies, but also focusing on making existing safety features more accessible to lower-cost vehicles. Safety shouldn't be a luxury only the wealthy can afford." "Agreed," Catherine said, impressed by his thinking. "Anything else?" "Yes." Ryan's expression softened slightly. "I want Noah to grow up knowing his grandfather's work mattered, that it was valued and respected. I want him to believe that doing the right thing eventually pays off, even if it takes time. Those aren't business conditions, Catherine observed. No, Ryan agreed. They're personal ones, but they matter to me more than the business aspects. Catherine considered him for a long moment, struck by the fundamental decency that guided his decisions. It was refreshing and rare in her experience. I accept your conditions, she said finally. All of them. We'll draw up the revised agreements. Today! Ryan nodded, relief visible in his posture. Good. That's good. An awkward silence fell between them, neither quite sure how to proceed now that the business matter was settled. What happens next? Ryan asked finally. I'll need to return to Detroit, Catherine said. There's a board meeting. I can no longer postpone, and the Takahashi merger requires my attention, but I'll have legal draw up the formal agreements for both the licensing and the innovation center. Janet, my assistant, will coordinate with you on the details. How long will all that take? A few weeks for the paperwork, Catherine estimated. Longer for the physical setup of the innovation center. We'll need to find appropriate space, outfit it, hire staff. Ryan hesitated, then said, There's an old warehouse on the edge of town. It used to be a textile mill before those jobs went. Overseas, it's been empty for years, but the structure is sound. With renovation, it could be perfect. Catherine nodded, making a mental note. I'll have someone look into it. Another silence, more charged than the last. I should get to the shop, Ryan said finally. Morning appointments. Of course. Catherine walked him to the door, then paused. Thank you, Ryan. Not just for accepting the proposal, but for helping me understand what really matters here. This isn't just about correcting a financial injustice. It's about honoring innovation that saves lives. Ryan studied her for a moment, then offered a genuine smile. You know, you're not what I expected from a Weber. Catherine raised an eyebrow. What did you expect? Someone more like your father, I guess. Corporate, calculating. I can be those things when necessary, Catherine admitted. But I'm trying to be something else too. Something better. Ryan nodded, understanding in his eyes. Aren't we all? After he had gone, Catherine returned to her laptop, opening a new document. She began typing rapidly, outlining her vision for the Walter Matthews Automotive Safety Foundation and the Riverbrook Innovation Center. The ideas flowed easily, her usual precise business language interspersed with more idealistic phrasing that would have been out of place in her typical corporate communications. By mid-morning, she had drafted a comprehensive proposal that integrated Ryan's conditions with her original concept, creating something that honored Walter Matthews' legacy while positioning Weber Automotive for a more ethical and innovative future. As she prepared to email it to Janet, her phone rang, an unfamiliar local number. Catherine Weber, she answered crisply. Ms. Weber, this is Mayor Griffith of Riverbrook. The man's voice was friendly but businesslike. I hope I'm not interrupting. Anything important? Not at all, Mayor, Catherine replied, curious about the call. What can I do for you? Word travels fast in small towns, the mayor said, a smile evident in his voice. I understand you're considering establishing some kind of research facility here in Riverbrook. Catherine made a mental note to ask Ryan about the town's information pipeline. That's correct, though we're still in the planning stages. I'd like to invite you to lunch today if you're available, Mayor Griffith continued. As mayor, I have a vested interest in any significant business developments in our town, and I may have some information that could be beneficial to your project. Catherine glanced at her schedule. The board meeting wasn't until tomorrow, and her flight back to Detroit wasn't until late afternoon. Lunch would be fine, where and when? The Willow Creek Golf Club just outside town. Noon. It's nothing fancy, but they have an excellent chef. I'll be there, Catherine confirmed. After ending the call, she returned to her email, adding, a note to Janet about this new development before sending off the proposal. Then she opened her browser and searched for information about Mayor Griffith and Riverbrook's economic situation. The results painted a familiar picture. A small town struggling with the loss of manufacturing jobs, young people leaving for opportunities in larger cities, an aging population trying to maintain community institutions with dwindling resources. Riverbrook wasn't dying, but it was at a crossroads. Mayor James Griffith had been in office for nearly a decade, having run on a platform of economic revitalization. His background was interesting. He'd been a manufacturing executive himself before returning to his hometown to care for his aging parents. Since taking office, he'd had modest success attracting small businesses to Riverbrook, but nothing transformative. Until now, perhaps. The Willow Creek Golf Club turned out to be a pleasant surprise, a well-maintained course with a clubhouse that managed to be both rustic and elegant. As Catherine entered the dining room, she immediately spotted Mayor Griffith at a corner table, a tall, silver-haired man in his 60s with an easy smile and alert eyes. "Ms. Weber," he greeted her, standing to shake her hand. "Thank you for making time in what I'm sure is a busy schedule." "Thank you for the invitation," Catherine replied, taking the offered seat. "Though I'm curious how you knew I was in town." Griffith's eyes twinkled. "As I'm sure you've gathered by now, Riverbrook doesn't have many secrets. When a luxury car with Michigan plates shows up and its driver starts asking questions about Walter Matthews, people notice." "Fair enough," Catherine acknowledged with a slight smile. A waiter appeared to take their orders, and once he had gone, Mayor Griffith leaned forward slightly. "I knew Walter Matthews well," he began. "He was one of Riverbrook's finest citizens, brilliant, honest, deeply committed to this community. When he sold his safety system patent to Weber Automotive, many of us wondered if he'd gotten a fair deal." Catherine met his gaze directly. "He didn't, and I'm here to rectify that." Griffith studied her with newfound interest. "That's not the answer I expected from Harold Weber's daughter." "I'm not just my father's daughter," Catherine replied evenly. "I'm the CEO of Weber Automotive, and I make my own decisions about how the company should operate, including establishing an innovation center in a small town most people couldn't find on a map." "Including that, yes. Though I'm curious how you know the details." Griffith smiled. "Ryan Matthews and I spoke this morning. He wanted to know if the town would support such a development. I assured him we would, enthusiastically." Their food arrived, a colorful salad for Catherine and a hearty-looking sandwich for the mayor. As they began eating, Griffith continued. "Riverbrook has been looking for an anchor institution, something to build our future around. For years, it was the textile mill. When that closed, we struggled to find a replacement. This innovation center could be exactly what we need." "It's not a manufacturing facility," Catherine cautioned. "It won't employ hundreds of workers." "No, but it will employ some of our best and brightest," Griffith countered. "It will create peripheral opportunities. Most importantly, it will give Riverbrook a purpose again, a connection to the future rather than just the past." Catherine nodded thoughtfully. "Ryan mentioned an old mill building that might be suitable for renovation." "The Bradford Mill," Griffith confirmed. "Solid construction, plenty of space, and the town council would be very motivated to facilitate its repurposing. We could expedite permits, possibly offer tax incentives." "That's helpful," Catherine acknowledged. "But there's something else. You should know about this project." She proceeded to explain the full context: Walter Matthews' innovation, her father's unethical acquisition, the licensing agreement, and the foundation. Griffith listened attentively, his expression growing, increasingly thoughtful. "That's quite a story," he said when she had finished, "and an unusual move for a corporate CEO." "Perhaps," Catherine agreed, But it's the right thing to do, and I believe it will ultimately benefit Weber Automotive as well. We've lost our innovative edge. Reconnecting with the kind of practical, hands-on engineering that Walter Matthews exemplified can help us rediscover it. Griffith seemed to reassess her as she spoke. You know, Ms. Weber, when I heard that Weber Automotive's CEO was in Riverbrook, I assumed you were here to tie up loose ends. Perhaps buy Ryan out completely or offer him some token position to prevent any potential legal claims about his father's patent. That would have been my father's approach, Catherine acknowledged. But not yours, Griffith observed. No, Catherine confirmed, not mine. The mayor smiled, a genuine expression that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Then, I think Riverbrook and Weber Automotive may have the beginning of a very beneficial relationship. As lunch concluded, Griffith handed Catherine a folder. Some information about the Bradford Mill, structural assessments, property details, that sort of thing. Also included is an overview of Riverbrook's workforce, skill sets, education levels, etc. might be useful in your planning. Catherine accepted it with a nod of thanks. This is very helpful. My team will review it immediately. One more thing, Griffith added as they prepared to leave. Walter Matthews wasn't just an exceptional engineer. He was a mentor to many, young people in this town, including Ryan. That mentorship aspect, the passing on of knowledge and skills, was as important to him as the innovations themselves. Catherine considered this. The Innovation Center will include an educational component. Ryan has already insisted on apprenticeship opportunities. Good, Griffith nodded approvingly. That's the kind of legacy Walter would have wanted. Not just a financial settlement, but a continuing commitment to nurturing the next generation of innovators. As they parted ways in the parking lot, Catherine found herself genuinely liking the straightforward mayor. In her world of corporate politics and strategic maneuvering, such unvarnished honesty was refreshing. Back at the motel, Catherine began packing for her return to Detroit, her mind already organizing the tasks ahead, the board meeting, the Takahashi negotiations, the legal frameworks for the licensing agreement and innovation center. It would be challenging, particularly convincing the more conservative board members that this unprecedented approach was in the company's best interests. A text message from Ryan interrupted her thoughts. Stop by Old Mill with Town Inspector. Structure is sound, needs work but has potential. Photos attached if you want to see. Catherine opened the attached images, studying the cavernous interior spaces of the former textile mill. Despite years of abandonment, the building's bones were good. High ceilings, abundant natural light, solid construction. With proper renovation, it could become exactly the kind of innovation space she had envisioned. She texted back, "Perfect. We'll have architects review. Legal team working on agreements. Should have drafts to you by end of week." Ryan's response came quickly. "Thanks. Noah wants to know if your car is still running well." Catherine smiled despite herself. "Tell Noah his father's repair job was perfect. Car running better than ever." A moment passed, then another text from Ryan. "Safe travels back to Detroit. Let me know when board approves everything." "Will do," she replied, then hesitated before adding, "Thank you, Ryan, for giving this a chance." The reply took longer this time. "Thank you for making things right. Not many would have bothered." Catherine set down her phone, a strange feeling settling in her chest. In coming to Riverbrook to address a business matter, a potential legal and PR vulnerability, she had found something unexpected, not just a solution to Weber Automotive's innovation drought, but a reminder of what the company had been founded to do: create vehicles that served people, that made lives better and safer. Somewhere along the way, that purpose had been obscured by profit margins and market share calculations. Walter Matthews had never lost sight of it. Neither had his son. And now, perhaps, neither would Catherine Weber. As she finished packing and prepared to check out, Catherine made one final call to the real estate division of Weber Automotive. "This is Weber," she said when the division head answered. "I need you to begin acquisition proceedings for a property in Riverbrook, Pennsylvania, the Bradford Mill. And I need a top-tier architectural firm specialized in industrial renovations to develop preliminary concepts for its conversion to an R&D facility." "Riverbrook," the executive repeated, confusion evident in his voice. "I'm not familiar with that location. Is this a new distribution center?" "No," Catherine replied firmly. "It's the future home of the Walter Matthews Innovation Center. You'll receive full briefing materials tomorrow. For now, just get the acquisition process started. Top priority." After ending the call, Catherine took one last look around the modest motel room where this unexpected journey had begun. In less than 48 hours, her perspective had shifted fundamentally about her company, her father's legacy, and her own role in shaping Weber Automotive's future. The board would resist. Michael would worry. The financial press would speculate wildly. But Catherine Weber had made her decision. And now it was time to return to Detroit and fight for it. Not just for Walter Matthews or for Ryan, but for the soul of the company she had inherited and the legacy she intended to build. As she drove out of Riverbrook, Catherine caught a glimpse of Matthews Auto Repair in her rearview mirror. The small shop where a chance breakdown had led to a chance encounter that might just change everything. She made a mental note to have her PR team prepare a proper narrative, not a sanitized corporate version, but the true story of how Weber Automotive was returning to its roots through the legacy of a small-town mechanic whose brilliance had never received the recognition it deserved until now. 6 months had transformed the old Bradford Mill beyond recognition. Where peeling paint and broken windows had once testified to Riverbrook's economic decline, gleaming glass and polished steel now proclaimed a new beginning. The Walter Matthews Innovation Center stood complete, its renovated brick exterior honoring the building's industrial heritage, while the modern additions spoke to its future purpose. Catherine Weber stood at the window of the director's office, watching as staff members arrived for the center's first official day of operation. The parking lot was filling with a mix of vehicles, practical sedans and SUVs driven by local hires, more expensive cars belonging to engineers and designers recruited from Detroit, and Ryan's familiar pickup truck now bearing the Weber Automotive logo alongside the Matthews Auto Repair emblem. "Quite a view, isn't it?" Ryan's voice came from behind her. Catherine turned to find him leaning against the doorframe, a quiet pride evident in his expression as he surveyed what they had built together. "Better than I imagined," she agreed. "The architects exceeded my expectations." Ryan nodded, crossing the room to join her at the window. "They did, though I think our modifications to their original designs made the difference. Theory meets practicality. Exactly what this place is all about." Catherine smiled, appreciating the truth in his observation. The initial architectural plans had been impressive, but impractical, designed for aesthetic appeal rather than functional. Workflow. Ryan's suggestions, informed by decades of hands-on experience, had transformed the space into something both beautiful and useful. "Is Noah excited for the opening ceremony?" Catherine asked. Ryan's expression softened at the mention of his son. "Hasn't slept properly all week. He's convinced his teacher is going to make the whole class watch the live stream." "She might," Catherine pointed out. "It's not every day a major corporation opens a facility in Riverbrook." "True," Ryan conceded, "though I think Noah's more excited about the robot demonstration than anything else. The center's first major project was an advanced diagnostic robot, a collaboration between Weber Automotive engineers and local mechanics that combined artificial intelligence with practical repair experience. It was already generating buzz in industry circles as a potential breakthrough in vehicle maintenance technology. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Janet appeared, clipboard in hand, the consummate professional even in this rural setting. "Ms. Weber, the press has begun to arrive, and Mr. Preston's helicopter just landed at the town airfield." Catherine nodded, unsurprised but wary. Charles. Preston had maintained his opposition to the Matthews initiatives throughout the past 6 months, though his tactics had evolved. When direct resistance proved futile, he had pivoted to insisting on strict oversight, demanding regular progress reports, questioning expenditures, and now, apparently, making his first visit to Riverbrook to witness the opening ceremony in person. "Thank you, Janet. We'll be down shortly." When they were alone again, Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Preston's actually here? I thought he'd send some underling to represent the opposition." "Charles isn't one to delegate important battles," Catherine replied. "He wants to see for himself what all this money has bought and look for any evidence that it's been misspent." Ryan frowned slightly. "Will he find any?" "No," Catherine said confidently. "We're on budget, on schedule, and already generating valuable intellectual property. But facts have never been particularly important to Charles when they contradict his opinions." "Well," Ryan said with a half smile, "let's go show him what Walter Matthews' legacy looks like." They made their way through the center's main floor, where final preparations for the ceremony were underway. Staff members nodded respectfully as they passed, many greeting Ryan with the easy familiarity that characterized Riverbrook's culture. Catherine noticed how seamlessly he had transitioned from small business owner to innovation director, maintaining his authenticity while embracing the expanded scope of his new role. Outside, a substantial crowd had gathered, local residents, mingled with automotive industry representatives and media personnel. The high school band, which had improved markedly since the groundbreaking ceremony, played a medley of patriotic tunes. Mayor Griffith moved through the crowd, proudly pointing out features of the renovated mill to anyone who would listen. Catherine spotted Charles Preston immediately, his tall, rigid figure standing apart from the general congeniality, flanked by 2 Weber automotive executives who looked decidedly uncomfortable in this small-town setting. When Preston caught sight of Catherine approaching with Ryan, his expression tightened into what might generously be called a smile. "Catherine," he greeted her with formal correctness, "quite the spectacle you've arranged." "Thank you for coming." "Charles," Catherine replied, equally formal, "I know it's a long way from Detroit." Preston's gaze shifted to Ryan, assessing him with poorly concealed skepticism. "Mr. Matthews, I've heard a great deal about you." "Likewise," Ryan responded evenly, offering his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Preston shook it briefly. "I understand you've been given considerable authority over this facility," Preston remarked, impressive for someone with no formal engineering credentials. Before Ryan could respond, Catherine interjected smoothly, "Ryan brings 30 years of practical automotive experience to the role. His insights have already proven invaluable in developing the center's first innovations." Preston's reply was cut short by the arrival of Noah, who came bounding up to his father with infectious enthusiasm. "Dad, the robot's all ready for the demonstration. Dr. Chen says I can help present it if it's okay with you." He noticed Preston and added politely, "Hello, sir. Are you one of the important Weber people?" Preston blinked, clearly unprepared, for direct address from a child. "I'm the chairman of the board," he said stiffly. Noah nodded seriously. "That sounds important. Do you know how to fix cars too?" A flicker of discomfort crossed Preston's face. "No, young man. I focus on corporate strategy and governance." "Oh," Noah said, sounding genuinely disappointed. "Well, maybe you could learn someday. Dad says it's never too late to learn something new." Catherine bit back a smile as Preston struggled to formulate a response. Ryan placed a hand on his son's shoulder. Noah, why don't you go tell Dr. Chen that we'll be ready to start soon and make sure Rusty is behaving himself? As Noah dashed off, Preston cleared his throat. Precocious child. He's growing up in a repair shop, Ryan said simply. He's curious about how things work and how to fix them when they break. A practical skill set, Preston acknowledged reluctantly. Though one hopes he'll pursue higher education eventually. He will, Ryan affirmed. The first Matthews to go to college, thanks to the foundation his grandfather inspired. But he'll still know how to change his own oil and replace a timing belt, knowledge many engineering graduates lack. The subtle critique wasn't lost on Preston, whose eyes narrowed slightly. But before he could respond, Mayor Griffith approached to announce that everything was ready to begin the ceremony. Catherine took her place at the podium, looking out. At the assembled crowd, 6 months ago, many of these same faces had watched with hopeful skepticism as she promised a new beginning for Riverbrook. Today, that promise was tangible reality, embodied in the renovated mill, the new jobs created, and the palpable sense of pride that had returned to the community. When I last stood before you, Catherine began, we were celebrating the beginning of a vision, a place where innovation would be driven by practical expertise as well as theoretical knowledge. Today, we celebrate that vision becoming reality. She outlined the center's accomplishments to date, the diagnostic robot about to be demonstrated, 3 pending patents, educational partnerships with local schools, and the economic ripple effects already benefiting Riverbrook's businesses. But perhaps most importantly, Catherine continued, the Walter Matthews Innovation Center represents a new model for how corporations interact with communities. Not as distant entities extracting value, but as partners in creating shared prosperity. Not as faceless institutions, but as collections of human beings working toward common goals. As she spoke, Catherine was acutely aware of Preston standing in the front row, his expression carefully neutral, but his posture rigid with disapproval. She had no illusions about winning him over. His worldview was too firmly entrenched, his loyalty to her father's methods too deep. But Preston represented the past. She was speaking to the future. It's now my pleasure to introduce the center's director, a man whose vision and practical wisdom have shaped everything you see here today. Ryan Matthews. The applause was warm and genuine as Ryan took the podium. He spoke simply but effectively about the center's mission, weaving in personal anecdotes about his father's approach to problem solving and his own hopes for what they might accomplish together. My dad used to say that every broken thing contains its own solution, Ryan said toward the end of his remarks. You just have to be patient enough to find it. That philosophy guides us here. We're not just developing new technologies, we're finding solutions hidden within the challenges of modern transportation. As Ryan concluded, Catherine found herself studying his face. The quiet confidence, the unpretentious intelligence, the fundamental decency that had first caught her attention during their chance encounter on the highway. In the months since, her respect for him had only deepened, evolving into something she wasn't quite ready to name, but couldn't deny. The formal ribbon cutting gave way to tours of the facility, with the diagnostic robot demonstration as the centerpiece. Noah, true to his word, assisted Dr. Chen in presenting the technology, beaming with pride as the robot accurately diagnosed a deliberately sabotaged engine within minutes. Catherine noticed Preston observing the demonstration with reluctant interest, even asking a technical question that suggested he was genuinely engaging with the innovation despite himself. It was a small victory, but a meaningful one. As the event continued, Catherine found a moment alone with Ryan near the refreshment table. It's working, she said quietly. Even Preston is impressed, though he'd never admit it. Ryan smiled, passing her a cup of coffee. The robot is impressive, but that's not what matters most about today. What does matter most? Catherine asked. Ryan gestured around at the animated conversations happening throughout the room. Weber automotive engineers discussing ideas with local mechanics, Riverbrook residents proudly showing off their town to visitors, Noah earnestly explaining something to Preston, who appeared to be listening despite himself. Connections, Ryan said simply. People from different worlds finding common ground. That's what my father would have valued most, not having his name on the building, but seeing his vision of practical innovation, bringing people together. Catherine nodded, understanding. It's what I valued most about my father too, when he was at his best, before corporate politics and profit margins became his primary focus. Speaking of corporate politics, Ryan said, nodding toward the entrance where Michael Weber had just arrived, looking slightly harried. Reinforcements? Probably, Catherine acknowledged. Michael's been walking a careful line, supporting me publicly while trying to moderate Preston's opposition behind the scenes. As Michael approached, his expression relaxed into genuine appreciation as he took in the facility. Kate, this is remarkable. The media coverage is already trending extremely positive. That's because it's a good story, Catherine replied. American innovation revival, rural economic development, corporate ethical responsibility. It checks all the boxes. And the robot actually works, Michael added, sounding impressed. The automotive blogs are calling it a potential game changer for independent repair shops. That was the point, Ryan noted, democratizing diagnostics, making advanced technology accessible to small operations that can't afford dealer-level equipment. Michael nodded thoughtfully. I can see why my sister believes in this place so strongly. He glanced between Catherine and Ryan, something speculative in his gaze, and in its leadership. Before Catherine could respond to the subtle implication, Preston approached, his expression suggesting he had reached some kind of decision. Catherine, a word in private. She nodded, excusing herself from Ryan and Michael. Preston led her to a quiet corner of the room, his posture suggesting he was about to deliver a prepared statement. I want to be clear, he began without preamble, that I still believe this entire Matthews venture represents a misallocation of company resources and an inappropriate personal crusade on your part. Catherine remained silent, waiting for the inevitable but that would follow such an opening. However, Preston continued, not disappointing her, I must acknowledge that the execution has been more competent than I anticipated. The diagnostic robot in particular has commercial potential beyond what I expected. Coming from Preston, this was tantamount to effusive praise. Catherine inclined her head slightly, accepting the backhanded compliment for what it was. The center will continue to deliver results, Charles, both financially and in terms of innovation pipeline. Preston's expression remained skeptical. Perhaps, but there's another matter we need to address. One that concerns me more than the center itself. And what's that? Preston's gaze shifted briefly to where Ryan stood. Talking with Michael, your personal involvement with the Matthews family. It's becoming noticeable, Catherine. The board has questions. Catherine felt a flash of indignation. My personal involvement consists of professional respect for the center's director and friendship with his family, neither of which are anyone's business but my own. You're the CEO of Weber Automotive, Preston countered. Everything you do is the board's business. And when you spend as much time in Riverbrook as you have these past months, people notice, they speculate. Catherine's voice cooled significantly. I've spent time here because launching a major new facility requires attention. My leadership, responsibilities haven't suffered, as evidenced by our successful completion of the Takahashi merger and our rising stock value. Preston raised a placating hand. I'm simply conveying concerns, Catherine. Perception matters in our position. Thank you for your input, Charles, Catherine said with finality. If there's nothing else, I should rejoin our guests. As Preston moved away, Catherine took a moment to collect herself. His implication wasn't entirely without foundation. She had been spending considerable time in Riverbrook, far more than strictly necessary for professional oversight. The truth, which she was only beginning to acknowledge to herself, was that she found something in this small town and its people that had been missing from her life in Detroit. Something authentic, something real. Ryan approached, concern evident in his expression. Everything okay with Preston? Catherine composed her features into a reassuring smile. Just Charles being Charles. Nothing to worry about. Ryan studied her face, clearly not entirely convinced but willing to let it pass. Well, the formal part of the day is almost over. Noah wanted me to ask if you'd join us for dinner at Doris's, kind of becoming our tradition for milestone days. The invitation warmed Catherine unexpectedly. I'd like that. Several hours later, after the guests had departed and the center's first official day had concluded, Catherine found herself in a corner booth at the Riverbrook diner. Noah was animatedly recounting the robot demonstration to an indulgent Doris, while Ryan listened with paternal pride. And then it said the timing was off by exactly 2 degrees, and Dr. Chen checked and it was right. It was exactly 2 degrees. Doris nodded seriously. Impressive. But could it make a chocolate milkshake as good as mine? Noah considered this gravely. Probably not. That would be a different kind of robot. One worth inventing, Ryan suggested with a grin. As they enjoyed their meal, Catherine found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did anymore. The weight of corporate responsibility, the constant strategic calculations, the political navigation, all receded in this simple setting with these straightforward people. After dinner, as they stepped outside into the cool evening air, Noah ran ahead to greet a school friend across the street, leaving Catherine and Ryan momentarily alone. Thank you, Catherine said simply. Ryan looked at her quizzically. For what? For giving the Innovation Center a chance, for bringing your father's approach to problem-solving into Weber Automotive, for... She hesitated, then finished. For reminding me why I wanted to run this company in the first place. Ryan was quiet for a moment, studying her face in the gentle glow of the street lamps. You know, that first night when your car broke down, I thought you were just another wealthy executive passing through, someone who saw Riverbrook as nowhere important. And now, Catherine asked softly, now I think you might understand this place better than some people who've lived here their whole lives. Ryan's gaze was steady, genuine. You saw value here when others didn't, including me sometimes. Catherine felt something shift between them, a subtle recalibration of their relationship that acknowledged the professional boundaries they had maintained while recognizing the personal connection that had formed despite them. Preston thinks I spend too much time in Riverbrook, she admitted. He believes it's inappropriate. And what do you think? Ryan asked. Catherine looked around at the small town's main street, the familiar storefronts, the community bulletin board announcing the high school baseball team's championship game, the American flag hanging from the post office. Then back to Ryan, steady, honest, principled Ryan, who had become something she hadn't expected to find when her car had broken down that night on Highway 16. I think, she said finally, that sometimes the most important destinations aren't on any map. Sometimes you have to break down in the middle of nowhere to find exactly where you need to be. Ryan's smile was slow and genuine. That sounds like something my father would have said. I'll take that as the highest compliment, Catherine replied. As Noah returned, chattering about his friend's new bike, they began walking toward Ryan's truck. The Walter Matthews Innovation Center was visible in the distance, its lights gleaming against the darkening sky. A beacon of new possibilities. For Riverbrook, for Weber Automotive, and for the unlikely connection between a small-town mechanic and a corporate CEO that had begun with a simple act of kindness on a lonely highway. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.